Hello.
Hi, Miriam. Hi, Mary. Hey, April.
Hey.
Hi.
You're not in your office.
I'm not even in town. I'm on the beach in Maine.
Of course you are. Oh, that's awesome.
Everyone else goes in the summer. I go in the winter.
No, I love winter beaches.
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
beautiful.
Absolutely. We've had some great times in February on the Cape. It's
Hello.
It's beautiful.
Hi, Meg.
Hello, hold on. Can you hear me now? I got my volumes down. George, I just forwarded an email to you that I just got from Miriam. Do you see it?
Hold on. Yep.
Okay, if we need to share it later. Hello, Miriam, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Let's see. Do we know if Melissa is joining us?
I'll check in. She might just be a minute late.
Was there supposed to be an attachment, Peg?
No.
Okay.
Did you forward that to me as well?
I just forwarded to George because I just got it right. I just got it from Miriam right before I actually sat down to get on.
Peg, there were some attachments.
I was thinking, sorry, Miriam, what?
There were some attachments.
Oh.
Yeah, the attachment didn't make it to me.
Okay, I'll resend.
Can you forward it to George?
Yes.
Why me? Everybody, right?
Well, because I don't share. You know how to share. I am not a good sharer of stuff. That's why I forwarded it to you, George.
Okay.
Hi, Mary.
Okay. Is this the one that has the draft of the SCC?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
And
no.
Miriam said no.
No. Okay.
Well, I wondered if that information was in the FERCog information that came out that was just published. Is it in that?
Yeah, the wage and salary survey.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Well, we can use that. Do you have that, George?
Well, yeah, I received it. Becky
Yeah.
distributed it a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
Okay. Last week.
Yeah. Yeah, it is in there.
The whole feasibility study is in there, April?
No, what?
I'm not sure what the
No, we're
feasibility
talking, no, the feasibility study isn't in there. It's they're talking about the wage
FERCog, municipal wages
report.
Yeah.
That they put out annually.
No,
well, there are three of us and Becky and Mary, correct, from the Conservation Commission?
Yes.
Yes. So shall we go ahead and get started? I think we should. It's beyond 6:30. Okay, well, let's call the meeting to order, and I have it at 6:34. And I guess we can review the minutes from December 15th later on. Let's just go ahead with what we have on our agenda. Becky, I was going to ask you if we heard back. Well, the first thing on our agenda is minimum hours pay for fire department responders, but maybe we should go ahead and talk with Miriam and Mary now and then talk about that later so they don't have to sit through all that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's fine. Fine by me.
Okay.
So did you forward the most recent?
Just forwarded to George.
Okay.
What I was forwarding was the feasibility study and the survey results that FERCog collected and tabulated from a study with 9 different conservation commissions in Franklin County.
Okay. Okay. So that is different than the draft.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay.
I realized I hadn't sent those to you. So what they shared with us was the study as well as a draft intermunicipal agreement should 2 or more communities want to create a shared position. And so I thought I would share that just as an FYI. Obviously, if we were to go on that road, there's a lot more work that would need to be done.
Right.
Well, what would be helpful for me to orient you or to kind of explain where we're at, what our concerns are?
Well, everybody got received the land use clerk. Some of the 2 summaries you had, I thought those were very clear. I just had a couple questions. I don't know if about the rest of the board at this point. George, or
about the conservation agent position and the what had been sent out earlier. Is that right? From January 24th?
Yeah, Miriam had sent us 2 documents a couple earlier this week.
Okay, George, I just got yes.
And I just forwarded what Miriam had sent me to everybody. So everybody's got it now.
No. Thank you.
So I had a couple questions. Have you had a chance? Have you been talking with Lever?
I'm sorry. Would you like me to post the document you have questions on?
Sure.
So you can all your questions.
That would be really helpful. Yes.
Okay. And which document are you?
Well, I just had, I think the first one, I don't have it in front of me now.
Okay, the first one in her email.
Yes, it was 2 pages talking about the land use clerk and sharing with.
So if you want to just get started, and I'll get it up as soon as I get it out of my email, okay?
Okay,
That would be
I'm
great.
going to pull it out.
Appreciate that.
Pull it out for my own, so I can, even though I wrote it or edited it, I want to refresh my memory what I told you. That's helpful.
Well, it was very clear, Miriam. It was very, very easy, very readable and very clear and well organized. So thank you for that. That helps. One question I did have was, you talked about in March or April, Leverett and Wendell are going to be looking possibly for share.
Yeah. So their situation is that each town has its own part-time conservation agent, not a land use clerk.
Okay.
And just by coincidence, they both hired the same individual. So that staff person is moving on in March, is resigning. So those 2 commissions are now with a vacancy in March. And our land use clerk, Carrie Marshall, has been working on a different career path and has been getting some postgraduate certifications and licensure for working in a different field, really. And so are you there? I lost this.
Yep.
And so she, she's kind of given us a little bit more than she committed to. She originally said when we hired her, she could only commit to a year, and she stayed on a little longer, but she hasn't resigned yet. But I think that she wants us to be thinking about a replacement. And she has said, if we find a replacement, she'll be willing to stay on to help provide some continuity in the transition between, onboarding somebody, which is great because that is very valuable to have that capacity. We didn't have that with our last transition, where it took us several months to recruit a long-term employee.
Did at some point, let's see, I can't move it. Can I move this down? Can you move it down a little bit, Becky?
Oh, yeah. You mean like this?
Yes, thank you. Tessa stayed for 9 months, and she said she found it difficult to manage her responsibilities in 19 hours a week. Now, that was 19 hours with our Conservation Commission?
The way the position is constructed right now is a shared position between ZBA, PB, and
okay.
And I believe that it's really kind of conceptualized as 15 hours with some flexing up to 19 hours, with the understanding it's not supposed to go over 19 because it's an unbenefited position. Tessa found it very stressful. Carrie has also shared with me that it's time consuming, and it's a time consuming job. And I respect what she's been able to do and what Tessa did. But neither of them were in a position to really fill this niche. This was not their what they were hired for. This is a different kind of position.
Although Tessa also was the Leverett conservation agent, but Leverett defined the job a little bit differently, but not much.
So, I think at some point you had said 8 hours on the go it alone plan, 8 hours a week.
Scroll down. Do you want to scroll down? We can look at it. Yeah, and you know, these are, you know, we're brainstorming, you know, so things could be done in different ways. And if you have chance after our meeting, if you want to look at this feasibility study that FERCog produced, they describe a few different models. And one of them is where, and which I didn't even put on here, is where one host town hires an employee and then basically subcontracts that employee out to other towns. So then, you know, one town kind of owns that employee and the benefits that might be involved if there was a benefited position. So I think that right now the thought process has been to be not looking at a benefited position.
And if it's 25 hours, does it need to be benefited?
Yes, it's required to be benefited cumulatively. So if it's 8 hours in 3 towns, it's a benefited position, and then you figure out who pays the benefits, how they're paid. But you have to pay.
Well, if we did, would 8 hours in 3 towns, 8 hours per town, would that be workable?
No, I was really saying 8 hours for us.
So
I don't know how many hours the other 2 towns would want. So I don't think we should necessarily assume that it would be 25 hours or 24 hours. Because they've historically had a much smaller number of hours.
And you talked about wetland permitting fees.
Well, that's one of the ideas, you know, because, you know, we understand that, you know, this is not in and of itself, it wouldn't be it isn't budget neutral. So, you know, in an effort to think about sharing some of the burden, really, the financial burden for the community, for the town, for a position like this, you know, it seems appropriate that, if possible, some of it should be coming from wetland fees, the permitting fees.
And where does that money go now? Where does the wetland?
We have 2 accounts. One is for fees from state it's very complicated, but there's basically a fee structure set by the state for notices of intent and ANRADs. And we get a portion of the fees that the state collects. And then our bylaw, and we don't have any control over how those fees are set. Our bylaw allows us to levy fees. And we have a very antiquated fee structure that hasn't been updated in 20 years and is way out of whack with what other towns that have bylaws do for fees. I've been going through other towns' bylaw regulations, looking at what their fee structures are. And you know, everybody's a little different, but I think the takeaway is that other towns are charging a lot more because there's so much administrative time that goes into reviewing these permits, and we're not we're not compensated for that. So these fees go into two different accounts. One is a bylaw fee account, and one is the state notice of intent account. And they can only be used, those fees can only be used for enforcement and administration of their respective laws or statutes. They cannot be used for any other purpose. So they can be used for staffing with some caveats, because, for example, if we wanted someone to help with the open space committee, for example, with maybe reviewing things involving our conservation areas, those wouldn't be, that wouldn't be a permitted use, because it has nothing to do with permitting and regulation.
Okay. Those were questions I had. And what was I going to, I was going to ask about, do the former land use clerks, do they have an office or anything?
We have an office here in Town Hall that's a shared office with the Board of Health and the Planning Board and the ZBA.
I was wondering.
The Concom has a desk and computer, and our land use clerk has a take-home laptop and monitor that she uses, and printer that she uses, because a lot of the work now is not done locally. It can be done remotely. But she does keep some office hours. And, you know, we would have to think a little bit about how we would divide up the existing land. I'm not suggesting, I don't think any of us were suggesting eliminating a land use clerk. Obviously, Planning Board and ZBA depend on one, and I think we would still want to have some hours available to us with a land use clerk. This is really kind of dividing up the responsibilities and adding some professional level responsibilities that our land use clerk doesn't have the capacity to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
Or the qualifications to do.
Or the qualifications, really.
April, do you have, or George?
Well, I would love a chance to look at the feasibility study and all of that as well.
So I think,
so no, I've got those to look at. Questions I have about how do you envision the agent, what would their job entail?
Well, that would be to be determined. And you know, there's different ways to structure this. But basically, what the agent would have the capacity to draft permits for us. They would be able to interact with applicants, and not just right now, our land use clerk can provide very general information. Basically, she can explain requirements that are available to the public. So we have instructions on our website, and she can kind of explain those to an applicant. But if they have to go into, well, I can't do this, but I want to do that, would that be okay? She doesn't have any discretionary authority to make those kind of calls. That isn't her role, and she doesn't have the training to do it. A conservation agent would be able to go out and do site visits. They would be able to do investigations for enforcement. Our land use clerk does not do site visits, nor is she trained to do it. They would be able to, perhaps in some situations, act as a monitor if we needed to have eyes on the ground to look at some while a project was underway. So there's a bunch of different things that an agent does that a land use clerk would not do.
I just want to interject. I think just because Miriam's pretty much all of your experience, Miriam, has been with Carrie, outside a short time with Tessa. As you mentioned in your letter, Linda Scott, she handled questions of the public on a regular basis. And, she grew in the job. And so we had become accustomed to much more, someone that was pretty well educated and could have taken on those roles. Our job description never included doing the reporting. That was always done in coordination with the chair and with the committee. But so a lot, you know, our current land use clerk job description when it comes to Concom really allows for those things. But in the end, when we came to the place, the person that was hired had an environmental degree, but did not have much background in wetlands as like Tessa did. Tessa had.
Could I interject? Sure. I was on the Concom when Tessa began. So I was present. I think I got appointed in October, but I started attending the meetings even before Tessa began. And I knew Linda in her capacity because I used to go to Concom. I'm sorry. I used to go to Concom meetings when Linda was involved, and for the last 2 years, since I've been chair, I've worked closely with Linda. So I do understand what Linda's capacity is, but I think that the personnel board needs to understand that Linda was in that position for 15 years. And she grew into that position and developed a lot of expertise that we cannot expect in recruiting a new employee. First of all, we can't expect someone to stay for 15 years. Linda went to conferences, she did outside trainings. We can't expect that of an employee unless we're paying for it. And in this job market, it's very competitive. It's hard to recruit and retain people. We're not paying at a very high rate. We're certainly not paying at a rate where we're going to retain a professional level person if they can move on and get a full-time position with benefits. We're not going to get somebody with a master's degree who's going to work for $19 an hour, 15 hours a week, unless it's a very unique situation where somebody just wants a little part-time thing or they have something else going on. I mean, it's possible in the world that we would stumble onto another Linda. But the problem was that when we were doing the recruitment after Tessa resigned, it took us 6 months. We offered the position to 3 people. The first person took the position for 3 weeks and resigned because she realized she couldn't handle it. Then we had to go back to recruitment. We offered a position to another person that looked promising, and then she changed her mind before it went any further. And then finally we hired Carrie, who and I don't want to get into talking too much about individuals and their competence. Carrie's very hardworking, very smart, and really has grown a lot. And if she was going to stay for another 5 years, I think she could grow into this position in all sorts of ways, but she's not staying. And we're going to have to start all over again, training somebody. And I really think it takes a year for somebody in this position to really understand the ropes. I don't think that, it's a 30-day orientation period that really equips somebody to work independently. So having an agent would mean that we might be able to recruit somebody who has worked with conservation commissions in the past, who understands the Wetland Protection Act and how to do permitting. I mean, there are people out there with this kind of training. However, we aren't going to recruit them with a land use clerk position, I don't think. Not if they're looking for a professional level position. I think that just people aren't, you can go to McDonald's and work for $18 an hour. If we want somebody who's really a professional, has a lot of expertise, we're not going to get them for $18 an hour, $19 an hour.
I think too, looking at the benefit of sharing with other towns also helps them learn different ways of doing things and what other towns are doing, so that we can be more consistent and help us with some of the challenges we face.
Yeah.
I got a few questions myself, but I agree with that. I think first I want to ask, 2 of the documents received, one we're looking at here, the other one was the job description for the job. So that job description that I read, that's for 8 hours a week.
Yes.
Okay. My one concern is, and it's probably not your issue, is these other departments are also going to be looking for help. So we as the personnel board are going to have to be concerned about that. But in the scope of this conversation, that job to me sounded like a professional job. I mean, it required a college degree. The level of responsibility seemed pretty high to me. And so I think working with the other towns, if we can create a full-time position, we can probably attract somebody with a reasonable salary and a full-time job with benefits. And one town pays that person, and then all of us, the other towns, pick up their share of that cost.
Right.
I think that is probably my gut feeling says that is what is going to be sustainable in the long run.
Yeah, I agree that, and I think that more and more we're looking at regionalization as being, the future of municipal government services, is that, there's economies of scale and that we can't create and we can't replicate it in our little town. But, it becomes, incrementally more sustainable, but when it's larger. And I think maybe down the road, at some point in the distant future, perhaps FERCog will expand its planning department or create a conservation department with staffing countywide. There is a model. I talked with, I think it was Peg Sloan at FERCog, who said that in the Berkshires, there was a model of a shared conservation agent that worked at the county level for several towns. And that lasted for a while, and then some towns were no longer interested, and it kind of fell apart. So we're meeting on Monday. We've been invited to meet on Monday for a joint meeting with the Leverett and the Wendell Conservation Commissions, and we have a posted meeting. And I think those two towns are ready to go in terms of their town government. They're a little farther in this thought process. Part of why I think they're a little farther along is that last year in 2021, when we were in our recruiting phase, Leverett Conservation Commission and Pelham Conservation Commission approached us with the same ask about would we like to share a position. And at that time, we didn't really have our ducks in a row to even propose it, and we moved on and passed on that idea. It also seemed a little complicated that maybe Pelham, different county, I don't know. Anyway, so now we're looking at 3 towns that are roughly the same size with very similar demographics and needs. And it may be a little easier to conceptualize than it might have been with Pelham.
You said you're meeting this coming Monday?
On Monday. And, if any of you would like, it's posted right now. Leverett Conservation Commission is hosting it on their Zoom account, but I put the link up on our meeting calendar, and you're all welcome to come.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
I just have a general question. Now, say this came to pass, what happens with the hours of the land use clerk that's shared with the planning board and the Board of Health?
No, it's not the Board of Health. She's shared with the ZBA and the planning board and us.
Okay, sorry.
And so one of the challenges, and this is kind of how the land use clerk position evolved, was that I think she began as a conservation commission clerk, and then she picked up the extra. This was when Linda's tenure. She picked up handling the ZBA and the planning board, and those 2 boards don't meet as regularly, and the volume of projects that they review is much smaller than the conservation. We're the heavy hitters, and we really take up probably 2/3 of the time and energy of the land use clerk. ZBA is a zebra because they sometimes won't meet every month. Sometimes they meet when projects come up. So, they can meet twice in 1 month, and then they might not meet for 6 weeks or 2 months. Planning board meets a little bit more consistently, once a month, sometimes twice a month if they have a lot going on. We're the ones who meet very regularly. For 9 months of the year, we meet twice. And then the 3 months of the winter, we meet once a month. And we have, things do slow down in the winter, but we are really busy in the spring when everybody is doing their planning for summer projects and septic systems and new houses and people reconstructing things down by the lake and all of the enforcement stuff, and people need to take trees down in a wetland area and we have to go down and review that. I mean, it's just like a lot of stuff that we are doing. We're very busy. We did 84 site visits in fiscal year 2022.
Wow.
And some of them were very brief. Some of them were like a 5-minute site visit. Like we came, we saw some erosion controls, we left. And some of them took us a couple hours. So we have a very dedicated board. And I'm not suggesting, I don't think any of us are suggesting that we would stop doing those things, but it would be really helpful to have some assistance. And I can just say from my own personal experience that I go to about 99% of the site visits, but our policy is that we try to have 2 people present for the site visits. And it would be great to have a staff person who is available, because sometimes I have trouble finding another conservation commissioner to join me. We don't want people going out by themselves. So, you know, having an extra pair of hands that we could call on, not to say that they would be doing all the site visits. I don't think that's feasible, but, you know, there may be times during the week where people are not available and we would be able to rely on an agent to help us. Or if there was an emergency and somebody needed to get out within, so one of the problems is we have, if we do an emergency permit, we have to issue the permit within 24 hours. That means we have to do a site visit within 24 hours. And again, it would be nice to have somebody on call who's a staff person in case our volunteer board is not available. I mean, we're doing it, we make it happen, but it's very challenging sometimes.
Becky?
So the question, Peg, I think you asked was what would happen to the
Sorry, I didn't get it.
8 land use clerk hour, you know, maybe 6 to 8 land use clerk hours. And I think that's going to be a problem to find somebody that would work even that tiny erratic schedule. So that's going to be a problem. Not to say that's any reason, it's just going to be a separate problem.
Right.
Exactly. That would have to be coped with. And that's why this is an ideal time to make a change, because you're not taking hours away from somebody in a current position.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
Those 2 boards, ZBA and Planning Board, did not have any support person at all prior to
years.
They're asking Linda to step in, and that's when we formalized it and moved from Concom to a land use clerk position. So we're just not doing it.
And that's not, that is not being changed. I mean, we still need a land use clerk to work with those 3.
Absolutely.
Well, that's not clear at this point, I don't think.
Well, what I was,
so what do you mean?
Can I just answer? Because I didn't really answer Peg's question.
Right.
I don't think we want to see the land use clerk position be eliminated, or even to eliminate the Concom's part of it. I think what we would suggest is that we explore decreasing the hours of the position so that some of those costs could be transferred over to the agent position. And still have the the land use clerk do some office. Again, this is all to be determined, and I would want to include the other 2 boards chairs in our thought process about this for sure. But it's conceivable that perhaps the land use clerk would continue to do what they do for the ZBA and the planning board, and maybe do 4 hours a week for the Conservation Commission, so that there's some continuity in their hours, or maybe it would be 6 hours. I don't know. And then the rest of the hours would go to the conservation agent position, so that we would divide up what we're doing currently and offload some of it. But again, those details would need to get fleshed out.
Right. And the land use clerk currently works for all 3 boards for how many hours?
19.
15 to 19.
19.
19.
15 to 19. Yeah, it varies.
Okay.
Becky, do you know in the last fiscal year how many hours on average she worked?
It's
the last fiscal year probably doesn't apply because we didn't have the clerk for half of that fiscal year, but.
Right, we'd have to look at the calendar year, and I can figure that out. I know Tessa was running closer to 18 to 22 during her 9 months, but that's when the NRADs were really hotter. There was much more activity, I think, with the NRADs at that point yeah. So I'll go back and find that information out so you'll have it in working out your decisions.
So George or April,
and Melody's here too, I think.
Is Melody here?
Yes, Melody's here.
I don't see her. Hi, Melody.
Scroll down, there she is. She's waving.
Okay, I don't see her. Well, so this sounds like something that after your meeting on Monday, with Leverett and Wendell, this is something Personnel Board needs to talk and discuss. And I suppose, and maybe I'm thinking of this wrong, put you on our agenda for February?
That's possible.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
That sounds
So
great.
can I just ask a question about what would be the process if we were to do something like this with 2 other towns? I mean, is that a decision that also involves the select board? How would that be done, I guess?
The creation of a new position itself, which this is, involves the select board. So the select board's already involved.
Okay.
It's just to what degree with the interagency agreement and the other things would have to be signed off by them. I tried to get a jump start on this, talking with Margie McGinnis, the town administrator in Leverett, but she did not know that the Concom was pursuing this. So I'll talk more with her in the coming weeks. So there's not, we've done these positions with other towns. I don't think there's any current example. Leverett itself is using FERCog services for their accountant and using a consultant that's a more regional person for their assessors. So they have more of these, group positions. Our model, for the most part, our part-timers have been in place for a longer time, and many of them work in other towns, but there's not been a formal arrangement. Right. So you have options. It could be that we could hire them, all 3 towns could hire them separately as well, because once, because that's the biggest concern if the town is trying to avoid the benefits, is that the creep, because I know Tessa's hours in Leverett were creeping too. When Tessa was here in the land use position, we were over 20 some of the time just with her alone because of the Concom hours. So it's going to be a little complicated because the idea of training a land use clerk about the Concom stuff and bringing in a new agent means that you have 2 individuals that will have a learning curve instead of 1. So there's a lot to consider, and I know it'll all get figured out, but you just have to think of all the aspects. And I know Miriam's been very patient because when she first wanted to do something more like this, we had just committed to Carrie, we had just hired her, and then these ideas came up a few months later. But with Carrie leaving, it's an ideal time to have these conversations and work it out so the services are provided that the Conservation Commission needs.
So Carrie is leaving when? Soon.
She hasn't given us a date, but my sense was that she would like to be able to move on in March.
She's she's working through her tests, and when those are complete in the next couple of months, but she said she would have time to, she wants to be sure she's not just leaving somebody without any support.
Right.
Which I appreciate.
So what's the market like out there in terms of talent, people available if we were to make this a full-time job supporting all 3 towns, and with benefits, it would be attractive, I would think, from a dollar's point of view. Yeah. What do we know that if there's a good supply of individuals interested or with the skills we would need?
I think that the reality is that the job market in many fields right now is just tight. And, you know, there are a lot of reasons. I think the pandemic changed a lot of people's work culture and people's priorities, and we haven't kind of recalibrated completely. But in this,
So, can I interrupt for a second? I have to go and jump onto the
Bye,
ZBA.
Mary. Thank you, Mary.
So thank you.
Mary.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mary.
Mary.
Oh, hold on one sec.
But there are people trained.
So what I was just going to say was that there are professionals out there. I think it's hard to recruit somebody for a very small position, because then they have people who need a full income, need to do a patchwork quilt of things. So coordinating with 2 other towns, especially even if we had 3 positions, we each hired independently, but we had an agreement to do shared recruitment so that we're not competing with one another. That even would perhaps be a viable path. Because right now, if we were to post for an 8-hour position, we'd be competing with Leverett and Wendell and maybe Pelham and a bunch of other little towns that want a little part-time conservation agent. There aren't that many who want at any given time a little position with limited hours and no benefits. So I think
that's why I'm supportive of the idea of one town hires the person, they're a full-time person in that town with benefits. That makes the job attractive to them. And then that town bills out to the other towns under some agreement. Becky.
Neither Leverett or Wendell have an appetite to pay benefits. I'm pretty certain on that. Did you get that impression, Miriam?
We haven't met with the other, I met briefly with Leverett's Conservation Commission. I think these are all things we were going to talk about this coming Monday.
Oh, okay.
Good.
Becky, would you like to come for that meeting?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean,
I'd be interested.
The only thing I would say about that is they may not want to, but if we decide to go into an agreement like this, then probably the person's job is going to be close to the threshold for benefits, right?
Right.
I would think so.
And if we can couple this with really looking at our fee structure and schedule, that could offer a way to offset the cost.
Yeah,
and it has to happen. I think
that
that
I would mention that to the other 2 towns. If they're not thinking that way, hopefully they'll think that way, and that would help them maybe get on board with this idea. In terms
one
of
thing to be aware of is that when Leverett doesn't have a bylaw, Wendell does. So we're a little different in that Wendell and Shutesbury have a bylaw, which is really kind of where we have control over a fee structure. And of the 3 commissions, I hate to tell you this, but we have a much larger volume of projects. And I don't know if that's really because we have more wetlands. I think a lot of it has to do with the lake and how many projects have to get permitted. You know, about 30% of everything we permit involves the Lake District, which is a little unique compared to the other 2 communities. They don't have big residential lakes like this. But that is an interesting dynamic for us.
But I agree with George about, having one town, if it ends up being benefited, having one town be in charge of that. Well, you have to see after your meeting on Monday, you'll have more of a feeling for what they're thinking. Are you meeting with the conservation commissions and anybody else from the town?
I don't know. That's a good question. I will ask, and I probably will send an email out to the select board as well, just to invite them and let them know. I'll send them the same documents that I've sent you guys.
Okay.
So
those were very helpful, Miriam. Thank you for those.
But also get the planning board and the ZBA looped in on the land use clerk.
Yes,
because that's going to have to be changed fairly soon. And
I reached out to the 2 chairs, and I haven't heard back from them, but they're busy right now. There's a lot going on this week.
And Becky, you said you would be able to attend that Monday meeting?
Yeah, what, do you have a time for it, Miriam?
Yeah, it's at 7 o'clock.
Okay, 7 p.m.
There's also, yeah, 7 o'clock.
Okay, does anybody else have any other questions for Miriam?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
This will take some time.
I just want to apologize. Earlier there was stuff going on and I was like a little making faces, I think, so I apologize.
Yeah, I figured out something was going on.
Yeah, I tried to find a very secure place where I wasn't interrupted, and all of a sudden there was total chaos in the room.
So
Well,
sorry.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to leave, but
Okay.
thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
All right.
Well, you know, regionalization, Miriam said it, it's the future with the difficulty we're having finding people to do all kinds of things. I mean, this could be a good model for other things.
George, I just want to tell you, you know, when Tessa was working in Leverett, she was working like 8 hours tops, and then working in Shutesbury like 14. And part of the reason they didn't want to talk about it was they didn't want to have to be caught in a benefited position when their needs were so much less than ours. So we've had this conversation. Tessa was the last person and she worked in Leverett. And the other huge problem with this is the job description for a Concom agent in Leverett is almost identical to our land use clerk. It's very strange that it doesn't have the level of responsibility and professionalism that Miriam's looking for. So I think that's going to be another challenge of how you hire somebody. You know, if they're the interest. So it's really important they're going to have these conversations.
Oh, that's interesting, because I would have thought, you know, most municipal positions are pretty much the same.
Yeah,
not this one. Okay.
No, because they're calling, Tessa was called an agent in Leverett and a land use clerk in Shutesbury. And outside, she did have, you know, she did go on site visits and she did assist in writing up, she wrote up reports, but which are different levels of responsibility, but everything was approved by the committee.
Well, it's really interesting when you read that job description. I mean, that's, you know, that's a professional level job. And if anybody wants that kind of an employee to work 8 hours a week, I don't know how you could possibly attract somebody to this job.
Right.
No, you'd be looking at maybe hiring a consulting firm of some sort, and that's way expensive.
And that's what Leverett does for their, well, they go through FERCog for their accountant. So they're paying $47 an hour for an accountant. And we're paying, you know, we went up to 27, I guess, but that's, you know, 50%, 70%.
Yeah.
It's, you know, so it'll be interesting.
Truth be told, if we paid $50 an hour for 8 hours a week to a consulting firm, our budget wouldn't increase that dramatically from the 15, 16,000 that it's at now. It would, but you know, at 8 hours a week, if that's really all it is, that might be the right way to go, because finding somebody to do all the things that are in that job description, I just don't see how you're going to get a part-timer to do that.
But as a full-time, I was just crunching some numbers, and a full-time agent would be $52,000 at $25 an hour, which that amount did seem to line up with what other agents in Franklin County are being paid.
Yeah, I looked at the survey. There was only like 3 other towns that reported.
That's right.
You saw that too. Yeah, all the rest were blank. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. It's. Yeah.
Don't know what that means, but I thought that was really
strange. They don't have them. That's what it means. They do not have that.
Yeah.
And
so it's all volunteers?
Yes. Yes. You know, we had nothing but volunteers until Linda started 17 years ago.
So how about we expand the board by 2 additional positions?
Because one person is doing all the work. So even if you bring in 2 more people to sit on the board, you'll still just have one person doing the work.
Yeah.
And Miriam is working herself to death.
Yeah.
She's doing a lot.
We don't want to burn people out.
No. Well, it'll be interesting to learn the results of the meeting that they have, the meeting on Monday.
Mm-hmm. I would like, if I would like to go, I'm curious. It'd be Leverett and Wendell and Shutesbury, is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
And I won't be able to attend, for the record.
So will it be online? And who did she say was going to be?
It's posted, it's a Leverett meeting, but it's posted on our Concom.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be hard to get there.
Okay.
From here.
That's Monday. Okay, I'll try to remember that. Okay.
Yeah, it's on there. Yep. So I'm looking at the calendar. Yep, it's there.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Okay, so is there any on this topic of discussion, is there anything else that anybody wants to contribute or question or say? Becky?
I was just wondering, George, would you mind doing an analysis from the new FERCog numbers? I know there's not much to work with, but just.
Yeah, sure. In the same format that I typically do. Let me I've got it up. Yeah, town of Greenfield has 20 hours a week. They're 2689, Bernardston 2438, and then Shelburne 1944. Yeah, I could show you the ones that have it. I mean, anybody can see it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
most don't have it. Blank.
Right.
I just so it proves out the figure that she's given. Just something real simple.
Sure, I'll distribute something to everybody. I'm traveling starting on Sunday. I'll try and do it in the next few days. Oh, actually, we got a whole month. Yes, I will.
Okay.
Thank you so much, George. Appreciate it.
Thank you. No yes, much appreciated. Okay, so moving on. Why don't we go to the minutes that George sent out from December 15th? Did anybody have any changes?
I did not.
I did not as well. So do we have enough people? I cannot see Melody, so she's still with us?
Yes, I think you need, if you scroll down one, you'll see her, I think.
I can't scroll.
Yeah, there's an arrow. Usually there's an arrow to show all the participants.
I'm here.
I can take this down. So.
Okay, thank you.
You can make your screen bigger too.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Perfect.
There we are.
Oh, let me see.
So did anybody
there you are. Yeah.
Did anybody have any changes to the minutes? Thank you, George, by the way, for the minutes.
You're welcome.
No.
The only thing under next meetings that's going to be January, it's going to be not January 15th now. I mean, it was then, but it's now.
Well, that's why. That's what it was. That's why it's in the minutes that way, because that's what we agreed to in that meeting.
So it looks good to me. All those in favor of it?
Arvanitis, aye.
Ross, aye.
Stein, aye.
Chartier, aye.
Okay, thank you, George.
You're welcome.
So moving on, we were going to talk about minimum hours pay for fire department responders. Where were we going to meet with Lenny? Was Lenny going to come back? He was going to offer you. Remember, you were going to talk about the deputy fire chief position, Becky? Did you get to
you guys are, well, that's the job. You guys have to finish your conversations about the deputy fire chief.
I thought we had sent it. I thought we had, and we were going to send it to him for review.
And what did you come up with? I guess I missed it.
Oh,
I don't have anything to present to Lenny about the deputy fire chief from that I know of.
We have the old job description.
mm-hmm.
My recollection was we looked it over, we made some edits, but as far as the content, the duties themselves, we wanted his feedback and we wanted him to review that. That was my recollection.
That's how I remember
That's what I thought as well.
Because you have made no changes to it at this point for him to respond to, right?
Right, mostly. So I'm looking at
I don't think we had the conversation. Have you thoroughly, I mean, the main issues I didn't think were discussed. I thought we ended before the like the issue is the issues about this position acting as the fire chief when the other person is there. I didn't think we did an alignment of the deputy job description with the fire chief job description.
No, I think you're right. We did not.
That's what I understood that still needed to happen before it went.
Because I remember as I was reviewing the job description again, that it sort of goes into minutia about, you know, what that person would be doing. And I was trying to align it with the fire chief. Anyway.
I have right down under the bullets on the first page, the chief will modify, ? The bullets on the first page under essential duties and responsibilities, which would change to, I think, activities and operations. I thought, for some reason, I thought Lenny was going to go over, I'm talking about the deputy fire chief position. Are we still talking about that? Or are we talking about?
We are.
Yes. What we had in the minutes from December was we attempted to align responsibilities with the fire chiefs, which it sounds like is still an open item. And we discussed the format and we made minor changes. And then the very last bullet, we will send a draft to the fire department, the fire chief, to make changes regarding duties of the position. So
yeah,
okay.
Once he made the changes to the duties of the position, would be a better spot to do the alignment with the fire chief.
Because I thought the conversations weren't concluded because you were just starting to touch upon, because the whole concept of hiring, because he's a strong chief, he can appoint, but he doesn't, any appointment he makes of a new firefighter has to be appointed by the select board. And it seems to me what needs to be clarified, if he's going to move people from, because he was never, the person in the position was never even a firefighter. He was an engineer. He had a special job description created for him because of his special status as a retiree with disabilities. And so it just opens the question of if you're moving somebody from a special status position to a deputy chief, which is actually in charge whenever your fire chief isn't there, in comparison to the process we went through to hire a fire chief, there's something totally missing.
Right.
We had a whole background check done. We had a very thorough process to hire the chief. So those are some of the concerns that we started to touch upon. George, you mentioned some of them at the last meeting, but we didn't follow through in that conversation or brainstorm how can this work. So it's not just the job description, it's a matter of process, giving the special status of a strong chief. And as a strong chief, we know that they can hire somebody, but can he really promote to the deputy chief position without there being the extra, the other things that happen when we hire a fire chief? And how do we make sure that we know, I think you all, is everybody understanding what I'm saying, or is it really?
I'm not. So
Okay, so we don't have any other situations in town where the department head can hire somebody without any input from the select board and make them responsible for their job whenever they're not doing their job. I mean, that's an extraordinary thing. Whenever the police chief leaves, it's the select board that appoints, well, that's not true. So if the police chief were really 100% gone, then the select board would appoint an acting chief. Other times, so it is similar, the police chief can say to the sergeant, I'm making you the officer in charge while I'm gone. So that does happen, but the promotions were made by the select board.
Yep.
And that's what's missing, is the select board's not involved in a promotion.
This is going outside of the normal process.
Right. And I'm just, I believe as a strong chief, he had the authority to do that, but I'm not positive, I think that's the question that we need to resolve, is if he does make that decision, where does the select board come in on that decision? And how do they, or do they have to? And I think that's a key thing that needs to be resolved with this job description.
And could Donna shed some light on this? I'm just opening up the Mass General Laws under strong chief, and it's complicated.
So maybe for the straight, sometimes we bring in KP law for a strictly labor issue, because Donna's specialties are, about town meetings and ethics and land use and a number of things. And she's often pointed me to others for land use. So, but I think we need an answer to that question.
Though it does say here that it's all under he shall have and exercise all the powers and discharge all the duties conferred or imposed by statute upon engineers and towns, except as herein provided, and shall appoint a deputy chief and such officers and firemen as he may think necessary. I mean, that's what I'm reading in the Mass General Law, but I think having it double checked.
Yeah, so if that
makes sense,
then I guess it's not an issue at all, but it just, I guess it's the second concern about the individual never being a full firefighter in the first place. And
not having the, just under the job description, not having the qualifications.
Right.
And does this preclude the town from being able to do a background search, investigation? Because that seems important. That's an important step that I think would need to happen.
Yeah, and we know that happens with all the police officers when they're hired.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it happens to a variable level at the fire department. And Lenny, I think, is trying to make it more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
It's an important step. You don't want to hire somebody without having done any kind of vetting. If you hire the wrong person, it leaves you open to liability issues.
Right. Is there a Corey check done?
Yeah, if this person has a horrible history and likes to set fires to buildings.
Those things have happened. It's just a matter of scratching your head, because the only time Walter filled this position, we did get the background. He did share his resume where he was a chief in another town in the eastern part of the state. But because this didn't go through a process, and I guess, and it's a toss-up, because like what April just read, doesn't need to go through a process, but it's just an oddball, and that if we could get some solutions just to be more secure, because what you said, George, is that's what the issue is. You want to make sure you have a process when you have a department head in charge of a fire department that you vetted them like our normal process is to do.
So Becky, who did you say was a source for us to go to?
Potentially KP Law. You guys know, I've reached out to them before. Attorney Brian Mazur has assisted us for the last 5 years. with different issues that come up. And he's really fast and charges by the 10th of an hour sometimes. If I
So there's $1,000.
Would you be willing? Would you be willing to contact him about that?
Sure.
So we can go further on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
And have we talked about compensation for this position? Because, you know, we're not compensating this position. And is there money in the fire department budget to pay for this position?
Well, that's the odd thing, because of that's why there's questions, because of his volunteer status and his disability, there's limits. So historically, he has not been paid for response.
Paid for training.
And even the training pay only started 2 years ago, and he's been here for 7 years. So that just kind of started by default when Walter kind of altered the terms of the arrangement. So we never really had, it's not a traditional position that he held. And it's just become more complicated by raising him higher.
So what, I just want to understand what's been going on. So I understand that we have this person came into our town, wants to work in the fire department, doesn't want to get paid. Was his title deputy fire chief during these last 2 years?
It was engineer of some
Right.
sort.
Okay, that's right. I didn't think it was. I just want to be sure.
And it was
that.
volunteer.
Okay. So recently, the fire chief,
right.
I know you told us this in the last meeting, Becky, but recently the fire chief elevated this person or changed this person to deputy fire chief.
Right.
Okay.
Is he requesting pay?
It's what?
I think at this point, Lenny last said he would like an $8,000 stipend.
Per year?
Yes. But he currently often will be at the fire station for 6 hours a day. And then he responds at different times. But it's like, how do you create a stipended position at this level without determining hours and yeah. Like I said, everything about this makes it a little more complicated.
Yeah. And when and if we would need to fill that position, then it would be really complicated if it goes on as it has been.
Why couldn't it be a contract 1099 employee?
Because the IRS would come down our throat.
Yeah, it would.
They already came to town when our treasurer was doing a $1,500 1099, a small amount of work as the treasurer for the Board of Health district. They are very, they will not tolerate any 1099 employees.
I can tell you from my experience, they would
hourly pay. I'm sorry, George.
No, I'm sorry, Becky. I was just going to say what Becky said is 100% true. I've been through the IRS payroll audits, and this position would not qualify as a 1099. This position would be an employee in the IRS's eyes. Yeah, they're really strict about that, and the criteria is pretty black and white in this position. It's under our control. It's doing the job that we want. They don't work for anybody else. They're not providing their services to anybody else. Like when you hire a lawyer or an engineer of some sort, you know, they're contracting with customers all the time. This guy's working in our town exclusively for us.
And he is operating all our equipment and using our facilities. This is not something he can do independently at home. And that even with the laxer rules from 20 years ago, he doesn't qualify as a 1099.
How did the town? I'm just surprised that a little town like us actually got hooked by the IRS, but okay.
And it was a little tiny piece of her job. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. Poor Gabe, he was so upset. It was really, they made her do all kinds of corrections and
so where did the figure $8,000 come from?
That's what Lenny threw out to me.
Okay.
And that's what they came up with.
Okay. So it seems like we need to, first of all, make sure that this strong chief encompasses that makes sense. And, you know, it seems like a collaboration with Lenny about what he is expecting in this job description, in this job.
Yep, so I can ask him to review the job description. I sent a bunch of job descriptions out to everybody right before the meeting, and two of them are the Leverett Deputy Fire Chief and the Leverett Fire Chief job descriptions.
Oh.
I was trying to line them up and they didn't really align either, because it seemed like their qualifications at a minimum should have aligned. But those didn't either.
You sent us emails today, Becky, you said?
I didn't see them. I didn't, but if it was right before the meeting, I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't either, Becky.
I'm not seeing them.
Okay, I will do it again.
Do it again.
Maybe
Okay.
it fell into the ocean.
I hope so.
Maybe
No.
you sent it to the wrong people. Classified information mishandled again.
God.
Who's next?
So moving on then, there's not much more we can do until Becky talks to, I forget his name.
Oh, what is it? Mazer.
Oh, I found my mistake. I sent it to the personnel board and it picked up the personnel board email instead of the group.
Oh.
Does anybody monitor that email? Peg, you monitor that email?
Not yet. I haven't gotten my little ding thing. Nope. Did you send it, Becky?
I just sent it. I just resent it. So that'll have, yeah, because I think it's, if you're going to have a deputy chief, that should be, their duties should align, except for the fact that the deputy would report to the chief.
Right.
Well, Becky,
there it is.
know,
I just got it.
Just got it.
That's certainly one thing we could do. We could do now, Becky. We being you, like always. We could send the current job description. Say, hey, you know, Lenny, could you at least at this point just update the duties? Take a look at this. Maybe condense it a little more concise, please. Because I agree with the comment I heard earlier. Yeah, I think it was you who said it, April.
It's like breathe in, breathe out.
Yeah, it's just too much. We don't need to be so granular on these job descriptions.
Well, that's why I shared the Leverett ones. I think they modeled them after ours.
Oh, we're going in circles.
But at first I thought they were better because they seemed a bit more concise, but then the categories kept going.
Well, I think moving on, I think that we do need to, like George mentioned, we need to have Lenny look over and see what he thinks. And
I'll
Becky, you're gonna,
tonight.
Okay.
I'll send him the Leverett ones too. Well, maybe I shouldn't confuse them straight off the bat.
Yeah, probably not.
I do ours first.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing Leverett's in this attachment.
I see a lot of things in this attachment.
But I'm seeing
Fire?
the fire chief.
Is that
That's
Leverett's?
but that's ours. I'm seeing deputy fire chief. That's also ours.
Yeah, I agree. I see the same thing. And yeah. And then the last page of it.
Okay, so I didn't include those. Okay.
Oh, wait, there's one here that might be Leverett. No, it's another page of ours. Okay.
Yeah, there's 3 pages of the deputy fire chief because I couldn't get my.
That's all right. Yep.
All right, I'll send out the Leverett ones to you next.
Okay. I can smell the ocean. What part of Maine are you in? Or
I'm on Nubble Road at York Beach. in New York.
What's
Just
it like in the winter there?
I bet it's beautiful.
It's
Yeah.
there aren't many people.
Yeah, that's great.
It's
The ocean
beautiful.
in the winter is wonderful.
Oh my goodness. And with these storms, the sky and the sun, and where the house is, you can see the sunrise and the sunset.
Oh, it's so spectacular.
That, so the colors all the time, right? The sunset colors, the sunrise colors, they last all day.
Did
Well,
you get
no, not with all the clouds.
Yeah, no kidding. What
Did
a
you-
dreary winter.
Did you get snow?
Becky. Oh, sorry, Becky. How long have you been there? How many?
I've been here since Sunday. I had the MMA conference in Boston on Friday and Saturday. Then I joined my family here. My mom's here and my siblings and their spouses.
Oh, no wonder it's such a wild time.
Yeah, chaos.
And you missed all the excitement here in town.
Oh no, I didn't.
Yeah, we saw your emails.
Couldn't say missed it. I wasn't there for it, but
You
and
didn't
then
miss it.
we had storms here that were similar. Power went out here on Monday. So, but I was in touch and I was working with people and getting updates.
I'll tell you what, we dodged a real bullet though, because
Oh.
we had all that snow in the trees from last Friday and it would not melt off. And then we had all this other weather since then. A
It
lot
made
of
me
trees
think
got,
of- yeah, what was it, 2009, 2007?
2008, yeah.
2008, December 2008. I'll never forget it.
Yeah, we won't either. It was a
Yeah.
long haul.
Tim said it was a second to 2008. It made him wish he hadn't stayed this year. But a lot of trees came down, like Briggs Road. They couldn't take a highway truck down there. Tim had to go in with a bucket loader and move trees out of the way.
Yeah.
Montague Road was without power. How long, April?
Well, it was 22 hours. We had
Down at the lake, I think 48 hours for you guys?
Longer.
Yeah.
And it was the whole road, all of Montague Road, the entire road.
Yeah, it
Oh,
happened
yeah.
at the very beginning, whatever
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
Well, it kept coming on and going out.
Yeah.
we
Oh,
had
how frustrating.
And then last night it came on. Were you talking about last night, Melody?
last Friday. It
Yeah.
went out again
And then
last
3
night.
times this morning it went out and then came back on.
I think they were probably, doing something with the lines and they just had to
Well,
shut.
every time they had to work on some, I don't know, they had to shut them
They
down to
unplug it.
on stuff.
No, I have learned over time when after an outage, when the lights come on, the first thing you do is flush the toilets. Don't reset your clocks.
Run quick.
And hope that it lasts.
And if you
Well, I
fill the
gotta tell
bathtub-
you, we had power out, but it's city water, so you could keep flushing your toilet.
That's nice.
I bet you can order
Yes.
takeout there too, huh? Well, I hope you're enjoying your time in Maine, Becky.
Oh,
thank you
yes.
very much.
That's good.
Okay, so sorry if I misunderstood you guys last time. I was just feeling that some of those issues, we still had more conversation needed.
Yeah.
I'll send that over to Lenny right now and see you guys at the next meeting.
All right. So
Yes.
what else is on our agenda?
I think we're good.
Is that it?
I think
So,
There's something.
well, so let's talk about there was one other item. It was the 2023 wage adjustment.
Yes, wage
So,
adjustment.
yeah, so I took a quick look at it and I just want to let everybody know, we use January's index, which won't be out until mid-February, but I can tell you, I looked at December's index number and there's no question, we have a floor and a ceiling. We take 3 years increases, the last 3-year increases in the index, and we take the average of that. So 2 years ago during COVID, inflation was actually less than 1%. So we applied the floor to that year. And then last year, it was greater than 4%. So we use 4% for last year. This year's inflation is going to be much greater than 4%. So we're going to use 4 for this year's numbers. So 1%, 4%, and 4% are the 3 years. And it's going to average out, it's 9. So it's going to average out to 3. So Becky, when you're putting the budget together, I can tell you right now, you can use 3% pay increase
Okay,
for the rank and file, people without contracts. But I'll have that for the next meeting for sure. I will
That would be great.
formalize it and I will distribute it before the meeting. As soon as the
Wonderful.
index is updated.
Great. Thank
It
you.
takes me literally 5 minutes, so it's not a big deal.
You know, it would take me a lot longer. So.
Well, you know, I built a template that all I got to do is make some minor changes.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
So it used to take 15 people 3 hours. So we went
Not a
from
fun 3 hours.
of manpower down to 15 minutes.
That's right. Somebody would throw out this number and then somebody would do the opposite number.
This
Talk in
is good.
circles.
This is
I miss
amazing.
those. I miss those days. Those were
I-
good.
Do you really?
It wasn't too contentious, but the fact of the matter is it wasn't building goodwill among members.
No. No. But
So it's pretty good the way we're doing things.
it's really important to compensate our employees well.
Well, 3%, you know, it's not what the average employee is earning. I think when inflation comes down in the subsequent years, our people will do a little better than everybody else because we do a rolling average. But for now, you know, 3% is good. I think it's good, but
Yeah.
the average wage increase, if you look out what the economists are reporting, has been greater.
Right. Even Social Security got
Yeah,
almost
Social
9%.
Security is over 8%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
8.7.
Everybody used to talk about that one because it was usually like 1.5.
Yeah, it was usually pity. Yeah.
Well, but we also have to make sure that we're not getting out of line with other towns in our in Franklin County as we move forward. That's something we need to keep an eye on.
Well, that's true. And we addressed it last year. We did a full-blown study last year. And how often are we going to do those studies? I
Maybe
mean,
every 2 years?
Yeah, I think we need to keep an eye on it.
I thought it was in our minutes from before that we would do it every,
3 years?
I think it was either 3 or 5. It was an odd
I
number.
was thinking 5.
I think it was 5, actually.
I think it was 5 also.
We have to remember that.
George
I'm
is
just
looking.
nervous. 5 years, it's a long time to remember.
Yes.
But I think it's written in the policy.
Okay.
Are you finding it, George?
yeah, hold on. Let me pull it up. Analysis of the COLA.
Of the COLA, and we talked about reviewing it every so many years.
Yeah, that's every 3 years. The COLA
That
will
is
be
3.
calculated by
Okay.
taking.
Well, that's
well,
good to know.
Well, let me actually, I take that back. Let me just confirm that. I take that back. That referred to something else. This policy will be reviewed every 3 years. Yes, but
Okay.
the wage salary analysis that we did last year, right? How often are we going to do that?
I think if you go 5 years, it's gonna be out of whack.
Yeah, I think, well,
Maybe
would
3
it
years
make
as
sense?
well.
3 years, sort of have those two things aligned, because that would be an opportunity to make corrections. If our formula isn't working, that will give us more information.
Well, again, we're talking about two things here. As far as the formula goes, this is year 3. We should put it on our agenda to evaluate how this process went at some point during this year, because we're at the 3-year point now. As far as what we did last year, wages and salaries, that's another conversation. How often should we do that, right?
Right, but I think they should be aligned. It would make sense to have your COLA and wage check and balance at the same time.
That makes sense.
So this is year 2 for the wage and salaries and year 3 for the other,
Well, yes.
for the COLA.
So the FinCom, it's a FinCom job, isn't it? That's your thing, no?
No, it's personnel board.
Personnel board. Yeah, it's
Oh, it's
personnel
our-
because it's
okay.
salaries.
All right.
So,
I mean,
George,
we make, right.
No, but I mean the COLA formula, that's coming from the FinCom.
No, that's
That's
what
coming
we're
from, okay,
That was created by the personnel board.
all right.
Yes. Yeah, it was created by
So we
the
need to
personnel board,
look at
That meeting, April?
but
Yes.
by a person.
What
who
hat did I
happens
have
to
on?
be on the committee.
Okay. Well, we can figure, either 2 or 3 years for for this salary review. But I don't know, you guys thought 5 years was fine, so I don't know.
I think 5 years might not, I think 5
Right.
years is too long.
I think 3 years is a good, well, maybe we should we should think about this and put this on our next month's, or do we want to decide it now? Do we want to say we will review salaries every 3 years?
Yeah, I think.
And not necessarily in the same year, it looks like.
But the next time we will. I mean, I think we can align it, you know. So we need to look at the formula this year.
Well,
Or how about not look at the formula till next year at the same time you review the salaries?
sure.
That
Okay.
sounds perfect.
All right.
Honestly, let me ask you this question. So we reviewed the salaries last year. We made some changes, recommendations. We got those implemented.
2020.
Looking back at that, what will we do different now in terms of the way we calculate the COLA? Did we learn anything from that tells us that there's something wrong with the formula right now?
Well, we kept slipping behind in a number
Yeah,
of
but
positions.
that's true. But really, we had not really implemented this.
Right, we don't have enough data on the on how the formula is working yet. You need some trend. We don't really have a good trend line.
No, that's true. So we've aligned everybody. We're now competitive, and we have this process. Do we remain competitive, I guess, is the future question.
And so I think Becky's idea of let's do it next year, review both and keep it on a 3-year cycle makes a lot of sense. And so we may not see much change next year because it's only been 2 years.
Yeah.
But we don't want to get out of whack again.
No.
We don't need to vote on that, right? Since it's written down.
Yeah, I'm putting in the minutes.
Okay.
I'm putting in the minutes. So I'm going to say, we will review it next year, and next year we can decide if we really met it.
Yep.
All
Or we'll
right.
forget.
No, we won't forget.
Okay.
We might forget.
Whatever hat
We'll
April
remember
has
at this
on
point.
at that point in time, she will
We'll
remind
remember when we're doing the COLA.
Yes.
Sounds
All
like
right.
okay.
Okay, off to the beach.
Yeah,
Enjoy
I gotta
your
go
family.
Run
Just
down through the rocks.
have a lobster for me.
Oh yeah, have a lobster.
I postponed lobster tonight because of this meeting.
Oh,
Becky, you need to
Oh.
use that chair for all your meetings too, by the way. That looks very
Oh.
comfortable.
God, and it's a full chaise lounge thing. Oh,
You're going to want to go to more meetings.
leather. Oh my gosh.
I know, and it looks like
You want to see out the window? No,
yes,
just out
it
there.
looks like portals above you, so it looks like you're on a cruise.
Yeah, it does. A nautical.
You're not. Yeah, what do you
So
see
I
out
have
the window?
well, enjoy your time there.
All right.
Becky, do you have 2 minutes?
Good night.
Becky,
Okay.
do you have 2 minutes?
Bye, everybody. Yeah.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Becky, I just wanted to follow up with the emails that we had the last couple of days about finance committee.